Well, hey guys, today I want to talk about equipping your bench with electronic measurement gear. How much it costs, what kind of budget. I think you can really do a decent bench for around 2,500 bucks. And that assumes, of course, you have a place and a bench to put your stuff on already set up. And I'm going to make a distinction here. I'm not talking about a professional that needs very expensive gear or somebody who needs a specialized piece of equipment like a very high-end spectrum analyzer or one of those $10,000 mixed signal scopes that have a high bandwidth. I'm talking about people like me who tinker with electronics, just want to set up a nice bench, that's all. So that's what I'm going to base this on. Well, if you're watching this video, you probably already have some of the gear on your bench right now. But if you're just getting started, hopefully this helps you kind of formulate a plan to equip your bench with electronic measuring equipment. Well, first of all, you need some multimeters. And again, unless you're a professional, do you really need the fluke meter? Do you really need a meter that measures out to 5 places? Yeah, that's nice, but for the weekend tinkerer, I don't think you really need that. You have to figure that most of the pieces of electronic components that you're using, like 5% resistors, maybe those 1% metal oxide resistors, 5 or 10% capacitors, stuff like that. A regular everyday meter is just fine. I bought this meter for 26 bucks, true RMS. I tested it out. It measures pretty accurately, surprisingly accurately. This is a nicer meter here I bought many years ago. It still works just fine. I do recommend 2 meters because sometimes you want to measure current and voltage at the same time in a circuit, or there's sometimes you have a meter set up in a circuit and you have an extra one that's free to use. So that's why I would get 2 of them. Of course, they're going to measure your voltage, current, AC and DC. This one does capacitors and resistance. And you have a diode check, continuity, duty cycle, and hertz. And that's pretty common on these multimeters. So that's what I would recommend getting. Again, you don't have to go through the expense of a nice meter like a fluke. I mean, they are great meters, don't get me wrong. But for the everyday tinkerer like myself, this meter I bought 10 years ago, and it works just fine today. It's all I need. It works just great. I would also recommend getting an analog meter because seeing the pointer move in some dynamic measurement situations, like when I was measuring free air resonance of a speaker by measuring the current drawn from the supply from the audio amplifier, I was able to find that. And it's easier to see that needle move than watching the numbers change on the meter. They do have these bar graphs, but it takes so much to make these change that it's hard to read. I don't really like the bar graphs. So yeah, I'd also get just a basic meter, analog type meter. Next is a power supply. I would get something with at least 2 channels. I've been living with this one for many years. I bought this, I think, back in 1986 or so. It's a 2-channel variable. It goes up to 15 volts, 0 to 15 volts per channel. And it does only 1 amp max. It does have a tracking mode. And it's kind of limited because it'd be nice if I can go up higher and have more current. Plus that meter you have to switch it to see different modes, and it's just really not that accurate. Some of the new supplies out there, they have 3 channels. They have 2 channels that go 0 to 30 volts, 3 amps, and a fixed channel that does like 3.3 or 5 volts. And they have a nice color screen that has all of the readouts at once, a bunch of settings and modes. I think those are very nice to have. Companies like, I know, Riggle and Siglent have them for a decent price. And I would recommend one of those for anybody getting started. For me at least, I need a better signal generator, function generator. I built this from a kit, modified it a little bit. Problem with this thing is it has limited amplitude, limited output drive capability, limited frequency, high distortion. It's for audio amp testing and some RF use, it's just useless. And it's only $30, but it's limiting. I really need a better signal generator. So I'm looking at a arbitrary type waveform generator. Like Siglent has their new ones. Dave over on EEV blog reviewed them a few months ago. And if you need something like that for your bench, which is pretty common, you might look that direction. Of course, I'm not going to specify a certain brand. You might have a brand you like, and there's different brands out there that have signal generators and power supplies and things like that. Oscilloscope. Well, that's the centerpiece to about any bench. You really got to have one. It's hard to measure dynamics of circuits without a scope. This is the one I started out with. I bought it as a kit, 15 years ago. Had to assemble it. 1 channel, 1 megahertz, and limited measurement capability on it. Low resolution screen, so it's kind of hard to see some things. Like if you're starting to clip a signal because of the pixelation, it's just kind of outlived the usefulness for me. So a couple years ago I bought this Riggle DS1052E, Riggle or Riggle, however you pronounce it. It's a low-end scope, probably the most basic low-end scope you can get. $330, but it has so much to it. Dual channel, 50 megahertz, has all the math and measurement storage functions. It's just so much handy to use compared to something like this. And it's even been superseded by a newer model that has variable intensity display. I think it even has more channels. It's a little bit more money. It's $400, but your money can go very far with the scope, and that's really an essential piece of gear you need on your bench. One thing when you do buy your equipment, buy it from a company that has a presence in your country. For example, this Riggle scope here, they have a presence here in the USA. In fact, I'm in Ohio and their office is in Ohio. I bought it direct from them. It showed up a couple days later on my doorstep. If I had a problem with this scope or I needed calibration and such, I could send it right to them. Now if you bought a scope, it shipped from China or something like that, had a problem with it, are they going to service it? Do you know how much it costs to package up an item like that, ship it to China, and have it shipped back? Not a good thing. I would recommend, again, to have the company to have a presence in the country of where you reside. Last but not least, or the miscellaneous items like tools and storage. You'll need some long nose pliers and diagonal cutters and screwdrivers and a whole host of other little tools. Soldering iron and of course storage here. These multi-drawer things, multi-compartment cases are nice. And I have some more up here. And it seems like you never have enough of these things. But you want to budget for those as well. Of course, my bench is a mess. It's nice to have these socket boards to prototype on. I got these at a very good deal when Radio Shack was closing. $1 each. They're good quality too. They got the nice rigid hard plastic with phosphor bronze connectors. A buck a piece. Can't beat that. And there's probably miscellaneous things. You might buy a pack of resistors and various capacitors and things. So, you want to budget that. Well, here's what I come up with. Total of $2,500. I think you can make a nice little bench for yourself. And instead of buying the cheapest scope, let's splurge just a bit and go with the $600 model. And just to use an example, it doesn't have to be this brand. We have the Rigol DS1074. It's a 70 megahertz scope. It has 4 channels. It's a newer model with the big screen and the variable intensity display and all that stuff. It's under 600 bucks. So that's pretty nice to start with. Signal generator. Looking at this Siglent SDG 2000X series. This one is the 40 megahertz model. You can, if you need higher, you can go higher, but you're going to spend a lot. I think it goes up to 120 megahertz, but you'll be spending about $900. And if you don't want one this nice, you can spend a lot less. I think they go down to under $300. They still have a color screen, but they're not going to have as wide bandwidth. These are dual channel as well. Lots of functionality with them. And the 40 megahertz one I'm looking at is under 500, about 480 I think it is. For a power supply, looking at one of these bad boys right here. Again, it doesn't have to be this Siglent model. It could be another brand if you happen to like the features. The price might vary a little bit. But this has all the voltage display, the current draw and all that. And you can set up voltage and current limits and all that good stuff. And you got 3 channels here. And I think this one is around $400 if I'm not mistaken. For some reason it doesn't show the price. Something wrong with their website. It's not loading some data. But there's one model that's a little more accurate for more precision work, but I don't really need something like that. This is a pretty nice scope, or a power supply. All the stuff it can show you on this little color screen there. And multimeters. Yeah, there's just a whole host of different brands out there you can select from. But you can get a couple digital ones and an analog one. You don't have to spend over 250 bucks. Tools and storage, I'm budgeting $250 there. And optional device, I put that in there just in case you need another piece of equipment or something I didn't mention. In my case, I would like to get a used spectrum analyzer. The new ones are too much, but if I could find one for 500 bucks, that'd be great for me. And the total I've spent would be $2,500. So I think you could build a bench equip a bench, I should say, for $2,500. And if you look at other hobbies like photography, for example, cost of camera and some lenses, you can eat through that amount pretty quick. So equipping a hobbyist electronics bench for that kind of money, put really decent equipment on it, is, it's definitely in reach. And in my case, I'm not going to buy a new scope. I already have a scope. I already have multimeters, but I do need some of the other things, so I won't even have to spend that much. And in your case, you might have some of that stuff already as well. But there you go. Just wanted to throw that out there. Hopefully it helps you out. Thanks for watching.